Since inception, the MTN Group has been a significant contributor to the economies and communities within which they operate. Their operations have also increasingly become a broader part of the economy through varying efforts, including employment creation as well as mobile money. As the MTN Group expanded throughout the continent and reporting their results to various stakeholders, the MTN Group decided to launch a new initiative earlier in October. We're Good Together, an initiative that is aimed at demonstrating how, in partnership with host countries, lives can be changed by improving digital access, driving financial inclusion, empowering and enabling SMEs, creating jobs, and broad community development. We went to MTN headquarters in Johannesburg for an exclusive interview with Group President and CEO Rob Shooter. Rob, thanks so much for your time and hosting us in your corporate home.
It's a pleasure.
So this new initiative, exactly what is it about?
I think what we looked at really what Africa needed to be successful going forward. And we see two key problems in the continent. The one is that we only really have internet access for about a third of the population. And the second is that only about a third of the population have access to the formal banking system. So for Africa to prosper, for Africa to move ahead and not be left further behind, these key elements are super critical. And if we progress in digital and financial inclusion, we also will stimulate small business and we'll create jobs. And it seemed to us that this core objective is, in a very interesting way, the same thing that the countries need to prosper is also what MTN Group needs to deliver for our long-term strategy. So you've got an amazing alignment between what's good for the continent and what's good for MTN. So that's, I think, the first part of it. And then the second part of it is how are we actually going to get there? And our experience over the last 20, 25 years, if we look back, is that everything we achieved in partnership. You know, either partnering with the countries we operate in to make sure that we had the right licenses, we had the right spectrum, we could roll out into rural areas, partnering with our suppliers, partnering with the people that work in the company, partnering with our distribution partners. So I think what we really wanted to shine a light on is that it is partnering that has made us success in the last 25 years, and it is partnering that is so much required now for both Africa, the countries, and MTN to be successful going forward.
But of course, Rob, many are aware of the challenges that MTN has faced in recent years, and the question comes about as to why have you chosen to launch this initiative at this time?
Well, I think it was about the power of the story to motivate not only ourselves to do better going forward, but also to celebrate the partnership, to encourage partnerships in the future. We historically as MTN have only really told two stories, I think. We've told a story about we've got great offers and, you know, get an iPhone on our network, voice bundles, data bundles, quality networks. So in that respect, quite transactional. If you think back on all the MTN campaigns and commercials, that's 90% of what you would see. And more recently, we tried also to tell the story that we take some of the profits we make and through our MTN foundations, we invest them in charitable projects. They're also an important story. But we missed, in a way, the most important story, which was that we are covering Africa with high-speed data networks, that we are connecting today across all of our businesses more than 80 million people to the internet, that we have more than 30 million customers accessing mobile money through MTN. We've created more than 5 million jobs across the continent. So actually, the real power and ability of MTN to do good, to be for good, is actually in the core business. And that's the story that hasn't been told, and we felt it needed to be told.
But in terms of the initiatives and some of the things that you have managed to do as a company, many companies in fact believe that they also do quite a lot of good for communities and for the economy. They believe that they do this or achieve this via initiatives like CSI. which begs the question, what makes this different from that?
That I think is really at the heart of it. There is a big difference between saying we are a commercial company and we do good through our charitable work, and MTN's story is that we are a for good company, because the core business of MTN, which is delivering internet connectivity, financial services connectivity, and the right kind of digital services, is actually what is most required in most of the markets in which we operate. It's again this alignment between the national priorities, what our partner governments and partner civil societies need, and what is the core strategy of MTN. And I think that is very much different from many other industries. Whether that's entertainment or resource industries. We are right at the center of what the continent desperately needs.
Yet despite being able to have connected so many millions of Africans over the years and played a significant role in bridging the digital divide, there's still a lot of challenges that many emerging markets and frontier markets here on the continent are facing.
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges, and I spend a lot of time in the markets. I spend a lot of time talking to senior ministers, heads of state as well. The challenges of Africa are still many relics of colonialism, apartheid in South Africa, centuries of slavery even before that. So we generally have countries that still have a big developmental agenda. They need to roll out infrastructure, they need to roll out healthcare and roads and sanitation, things that in the developed world we would take that for granted. So there's big pressure to roll out the development agenda, big pressure to create work for the youthful people of Africa. 60% of the population is below the age of 24. So these are vibrant, young, well-educated people. They are used to living in the digital age, but they need employment opportunities. And amidst the challenges of the developmental agenda, you then have quite volatile economic environments, very susceptible to commodity prices, to exchange rates. Economies generally not that well diversified for all the reasons we've discussed. So there are a lot of challenges in our markets. And we really believe that MTN is a key partner in addressing those challenges. We are, I would say, the biggest infrastructure spender in Africa. We spent this year $2 billion on capital expenditure across the markets. That's around 28 billion rand. In the last 5 years alone, MTN invested 150 billion rand in infrastructure. And because these are successful businesses and they're profitable generally, we paid 150 billion rand in tax.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, yeah.
But talking about the development and also the global drive to develop further, as outlined by the United Nations and their Sustainable Development Goals, what is your view on the continent being able to achieve that goal by the deadline 2030, I believe?
Well, there are many challenges there as well. As I was saying earlier, if you look at the SDGs, one of the key SDGs, SDG 9, I think it is infrastructure investment. So Africa has an infrastructure backlog. So not only do we have to modernize what we've got, as many other countries would have to do, but we also have a big catch-up to play. We have a lot of challenges in many of the other SDGs as well, gender equality, water, carbon, job creation. So I think we have a real challenge. I think we need to be realistic about that. But I guess the mobile industry generally believes that it is a core industry that will help countries to progress with the SDGs. The mobile industry was the first industry to adopt the SDGs when they replaced the Millennium Development Goals. And particularly for the mobile industry, and particularly for Africa, we will provide a lot of the key infrastructure that's required. We'll provide the digital highways, and we'll create a lot of the jobs as well.
It sounds like you are saying that we will do our role as the mobile industry and we'll do our role as MTN, but it's a partnership and there's another element that is needed in that equation for the continent to reach its SDGs.
That's exactly right, because everything we managed to deliver to date, we cover 560 million people with MTN high-speed networks. We operate across 17 countries in the continent, another 4 in the Middle East. All of this has been delivered in partnership because we needed to be welcomed into the countries. We needed to get licenses. We needed to get all the approvals to roll the network out. We've worked with, major technology partners to build the networks. So I don't think it's so much that we need something new. I think we want to get the narrative across that the success has been driven by partnerships, that MTN will be a key enabler of progress going forward, and we need to celebrate and build on that partnerships in the future.
But exactly what does this campaign, this initiative mean for people on the ground? You mentioned the young people, you mentioned small businesses. How does this translate into their reality, what MTN has launched now?
So what MTN has basically launched is a story about what's been done and what lies ahead. Okay, and so it means, under the framing of we're good together, is that we can all do better and make more progress if we work together. That can apply equally to, a partnership between MTN and the government of a particular country, as it can to our MTN operation on the ground, delivering rural connectivity, connecting schools and clinics, as we've done, more than 1,000 schools connected in MTN's programs over the last few years, and equally providing cost-effective solutions to small businesses, to very small businesses providing prepaid pay-as-you-go solar solutions, which is another big factor in many of the countries. So we want to put out there that we are a partner for progress, that we're open for business, that we are building the kind of solutions that the continent needs. Yes, we have dependencies as well. We need partners to work with us to deliver that. But much of what we need is in place, and we will only progress further in a partnership basis.
Rob, you have mentioned quite a number of big numbers, how much you have spent on infrastructure development and paid in taxes, and the millions that are employed through MTN essentially selling airtime and mobile money. So the question, as you mentioned, further development is, what's next? What other goals is MTN trying to achieve here?
Look, I think maybe just as a first remark, there's nothing glorious about being big. Okay, it's a question of what can you do with the scale. So it's the scale that we've developed over the years that enables us to service more than 30 million customers for mobile money. And it's because we've been successful in this partnership basis that we can spend 28 to 30 billion rand a year in infrastructure. I'm always one saying that MTN should not be thumping our chest saying, we're in 21 countries, we've got 240 million customers. Because what people are really interested in is what's the so what of that? What
Sure.
can you do with that? And there is no doubt that if you've got scale and resources, you can make a bigger impact. So that's really, really what it's about. I think some of the big pushes going forward is we need to double the internet penetration across these markets in the next few years. We need to go in MTN from 80 million of 240 million to 200 of 300 million. And that is going to take a lot of work. It's a question of how do you deliver cost-effective data networks into rural areas? How do we bring down the cost of the handset, which is a big limiting factor? How do we make sure we've got enough spectrum to carry that kind of traffic? So that is one big initiative. Second big initiative is all around financial inclusivity. And these really go hand in hand today, because as we say that a third of Africans have access to formal banking networks, we also want that to double over the next few years. And the doubling of the internet penetration is going to be on mobile networks, almost entirely in Africa. And we believe that the doubling of banking penetration will also be through mobile financial services, because these mobile networks agent banking networks, customers used to using prepaid wallets on basic phones. That's what enables the mobile financial services ecosystem. So it's a very exciting time for us to be living through this next scale adoption of internet and mobile banking at the same time. But it's going to need a lot of work and a lot of infrastructure. So that, I think, is one big theme for MTN. And of course, fantastically, that's also going to create a lot of jobs as we connect people to these economies. Second big theme for us is about the services themselves. So we really believe that once we've delivered a cost-effective data connection and the customer's got a data-capable handset, we're very interested in what they're going to use that internet connection for. And we believe that MTN can play a role in building the kind of services that are really customized to the realities of our market. Local language, local content, local presence on the ground for things like instant messaging, sharing of media in our Ayoba product, music streaming. You know, music is a great case study for our industry. It's a unifying thing. It crosses all of the age boundaries, the generation theory, and many of the international music services not really fit for purpose for the African market. You know,
I mean, talking about a sort of a tailor-made solution to address Africa's challenges and to develop Africa for Africa. Quite a lot of talk and attention given to the development of an African Silicon Valley. I'm just interested in your view on what you think the constituent parts would have to be to make that a reality.
I think we already have, so the Silicon Valley idea, I guess, is that you can stimulate an ecosystem of bright entrepreneurs to build these digital e-commerce kind of businesses. And why should that only be happening in Palo Alto? Why shouldn't it be happening in Accra or Abidjan or Cape Town or Lagos? So we very much believe that that's possible and is already happening. There's a lot of innovation, entrepreneurial things happening in many of these markets. A lot of these digital services we're producing are built in Africa. Look at our mobile money app, look at the music streaming business, which was a South African business we built, Simfi. Ayoba, the instant messaging is being designed in Africa with a very unique African flavor. So what do we need for this to really take off? We have the people. There are a lot of bright, smart, entrepreneurial people in Africa. I think they need funding. So that is one clear thing to work on. They need digital connectivity to build these and to look at what's going on around the world. And so again, you see the same theme of partnership. The people are there. In time, we will need more people to come and do these digital skills. So education is a factor, funding is a factor, connectivity is a factor. So if we get everybody pulling in the same direction, I think we can make a huge impact. A lot of Amazon's services are built from a team in Cape Town. So maybe what we also need to do is to celebrate the innovation we've got already, because it will inspire people. Part of a campaign like this also to inspire people to say, look what we can do if we work together.
Sure. I don't think many people would actually have known that Amazon's ties to Cape Town are so close. But of course, I think you'd agree with me when I say that not everyone can be, an entrepreneur coming out of Africa's Silicon Valley that you say is essentially already at play. So what happens to the other young people, especially as everybody, MTN and most companies have to do more to ensure that that youth dividend is harnessed?
Every entrepreneur builds a business that over time employs people. 25 years ago, MTN Group didn't employ anybody. We had an Excel spreadsheet and maybe some PowerPoint and a business plan. And today we employ directly 18,000 odd people and indirectly over 5 million across the continent. So this 18,000 and the 5 million, in what you're saying, we wouldn't traditionally classify them as entrepreneurs, but the entrepreneurial spirit built the employment. So this I think is the key point. Not everybody's wired to be an entrepreneur, but if we stimulate the creation of businesses, we stimulate the adoption of the technology, we will create a lot of jobs as well. And it will also help us to modernize some of the more traditional industries, because also for them to be successful going forward, they need to move into the new era, and perhaps some jobs will be lost, but many new jobs will be created.
So big plans, a big initiative, a big bright future I believe that you as MTN are seeing ahead of you. The challenges though, what do you foresee to be the most significant, and how are you planning to navigate them?
Yeah, well, I'm generally sort of wired to focus on the opportunities first. Challenges will be economic instability, many things that are not controllable, dependency on, as I said, resource prices, exchange rates, this sort of thing. I think, we will need to get organized to deliver our part of the partnership, and that means making sure that we are generating enough profits to invest into the infrastructure in the first place, and that we are well organized to deliver the strategy. We will need the partnerships to work effectively as well. And whilst there's much history that shows that it's successful, of course that needs to be worked on as well going forward. And I think finally, I very much believe it's also about sentiment. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we try and convince ourselves that the world is a very rational, economic, mathematical model. But actually, I think a lot of it is driven by sentiment. How do we feel about where we are, where we're trying to get to, are we making progress or not? And they measure in South Africa always consumer sentiment, business sentiment. When sentiment is low, you don't really get that momentum. So I think one of the big challenges is to shift the narrative, both in South Africa and in Africa. We are a continent with enormous potential. We have resources that are the envy of anywhere else in the world. We have the most beautiful scenery. We can be the agricultural center of the continent, particularly as the global population grows. And yes, we've got infrastructure challenges, but actually technologies like mobile leapfrog, older copper technologies, and we can make the most of that leapfrogging. So I think if we can shift the narrative and get a more positive narrative in, I think that can really make a big impact.
And then, Rob, there are a number of companies, a number of people who are trying to do what MTN is doing and trying to achieve this. What do you think will gives MTN its edge over the others that are in a similar race?
Well, I think competition is very, very healthy in our industry. And the success of the mobile industry in the past, particularly prepaid voice, was because we built an interconnected ecosystem. That's why the mobile telephony scaled so fast in Africa, because we had a number of strong operators in every market. They were competing, they were in a race to roll out infrastructure. You could call across networks. So we built an ecosystem. And I very much believe also for mobile financial services that is also required. We are absolute believers in interoperability, again for mobile financial services, because we saw the power of it in the core business. So we will always interconnect with other mobile money systems, whether that's Orange or M-Pesa or Glo or Airtel. We believe we need to be in partnership with the commercial banks as well. Many times in mobile financial services, customers will then migrate into formal banking system over time. So I think the point I wanted to make is nothing wrong with competition. Competition keeps people hungry, strong. You've got to execute, you've got to think ahead, and it's good for the consumer because everybody's building out. If I could then not dodge the question though and say, where do I think MTN has got perhaps some unique characteristics? We are a scale player across the continent. We are number one or number two in all of our markets. That really means something in our industry. I can't say enough, how expensive it is to roll out this infrastructure. To be able to afford to put 150 billion rands of investment into these networks over the last 5 years. You need scale. It is a massive, massive program. I'd like to think we have a clear strategy and a vision. So we have a North Star that everybody in MTN is working towards. And that we have also that positive spirit inside the company. A positive spirit that doesn't wish away our challenges, but is always looking at how do we overcome them and how do we move forward. And we should be the Afro-optimists because we are one of the few born in African multinationals.
Well, Rob, thanks so much for your time. A perfect note to end the conversation on. Of course, that wraps it up for us here at the headquarters of MTN. From myself, Fifi Peters, and the team, it's bye for now.